I have a question regarding how do you deal when the money goes off? Like, for example, you have a project of 18 months, so you had 3 months period to adjust, to communicate to people that they're not going to get the basic income. In the situation of Kenya, the money just stopped. How are you dealing with disappointment towards people? Because at the end, they are counting on that for their daily lives, right? Like,
Yeah, in the case of rural Kenya, we stay with them. Yeah, we made a promise that we stay with them. We confront the donor that made the promise and didn't keep the promise with the effects of the money stopping. So we will send this interview to impact markets so they really feel what the effects are, and we raise money so to fill the gap, and we dedicate our energy to solve this problem.
Yeah, I think it's also this also is a good lesson for us to design the future projects, saying that if we have made a moral contract with the participants, I think we have to have assured funding first in place. The people we are talking to for the additional money we required, so we are asking them that this has to be front-loaded. Upfront you should have the entire money because it's a promise we have made to give them 18 months, and that promise we have to fulfill. So the lesson that we learn in Kenya is that we need to front-load funding. We can't just go by the volatility of the market.
sorry, that leads me to the next question. It's me again. How do you see if, or do you think it exists a project for UBI without having a funding, like is self-funded?
Sorry, say again?
If there is a UBI project without, like, it's self-funded, like it doesn't come from an external donor, because there's always this dependency of where is the money coming from, even to pay the people that works in those projects, right? Like yourselves. Like, so that's like big dependency, not just for the people who is receiving the UBI, but also for those who work on those projects that also needs money. And then there's this paradigm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in a village where Kwiti A, where there is no cash at all, there is no money floating around. It's very difficult to have a community-funded basic income. But I can see in the future that these people may also contribute to the sovereign fund. And do some, share a bit of their profits that they make with their small businesses to support their own communities and maybe the humanity as a whole. But at this point, there are people there who have never had an income. They live from hand to mouth, as they say. What you earn today, you spend immediately. So you cannot ask from these people to contribute financially to the fund. But I can see that if maybe like 20 years from now, when a village like that is more prosperous economically, that they have experienced what basic income can do, and they might be prepared to contribute to that financially as well. So,
I could add a point to that. All we have seen so far is pilot projects and experiments, and they've all been very valuable. They've all been externally funded. This was true of the bigger, really important projects in Namibia and India, the Madhya Pradesh project that Sarath was talking about. They're very valuable projects. The problem with them is you could never roll them out nationwide because you couldn't afford it. And you couldn't make them permanent because you couldn't afford it. What we desperately need is a pilot project, preferably in a developed economy, that is self-funded, that is from within the particular community. There are ways of doing it, and some of my research has been on that. It's possible to do it in the UK. Because of the kind of tax and benefit system we have, you could adapt the tax and benefit system sufficiently for individual communities in the UK to mirror what you would do across the entire country if you were going to fund a genuine basic income out of our existing tax and benefit systems. It just needs a government willing to do it.
And maybe just to complement a bit an example of that today would be in South Korea. There is a local currency that acts as a basic income, and the way that it is funded is through a land value added tax. So essentially there is a tax on the land property, and that gets redistributed in a local currency. So 120,000 people, age 24, get it. Also about 240,000 farmers get this money, which they can use to spend in local businesses, and then the businesses can exchange that money for the state money, for the national currency. So that is an example of how you could roll out a basic income in a self-funded way.
24-year-olds, which
Yeah,
is
it's just
it's an
only for
interesting,
24-year-olds.
interesting project. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not universal.
I just did a talk on DAOs and public goods. For me, a UBI is, in a way, a public good. And the way charitable organizations have been run, they're centrally organized, and also they're detached from the beneficiaries. Do you see an intersection between such projects and governance? For both sides, those providing funds, because normally people are just asked to donate, but they don't have a say of how that money is spent. They're given a plan of how it's going to be spent, but maybe they would like to be actively involved. And also, do you believe also the beneficiaries, like those receiving the funds, would like to have a say in how the funds are managed? Because sometimes, say you are helping a village, and maybe if you ask the village, instead of just giving money to individual people, because with or without that money, I'm assuming, I may be wrong, they're still somehow coping even without the money. So maybe if you ask them what they want to be done with the bulk of the money, instead of it's being split and given to individual people, maybe they would like build us a new well or something like that. So do you see governance in how funds are managed?
I think it's one of the principles that individuals should have cash in their hands. Now, in the pilots, what we have seen is different kinds of initiatives. People come together. Okay, in the Madhya Pradesh pilot, we have seen they said that, okay, the last 18th month basic income, the entire village decided that the last month's basic income, we're going to pull and repair the temple. Yeah? And then in another village, we found about 20 youth coming together and said that we have this pond, and why don't we learn how to fish or how to grow fish? And then they created a fishing cooperative. No, so when it comes from the bottom, there is a certain authenticity to it, and a certain something very organic about it. I think we have, repeatedly we have seen in pilots that this kind of collective action happens. Like, for example, we are expecting that the waste collectors probably will start a welfare society for themselves or a trade union. So all kinds of initiatives are possible when we generate that atmosphere. But when we don't do it individually, and it automatically, the clan chiefs or the local chiefs or the politicians, they start having a say on the collective action rather than every individual feeling entitled, getting it, and then. So I would say that, yeah, it's important.
Yeah, one question I would have is, what do you think about the thesis that specifically, like anything related to kind of blockchain-enabled UBIs should first be tried in places like here? Because the theory might be, if we can't even make it work here, why do we think we can make it work somewhere else?
No, I think we've shown that we can use blockchain technology to reach the last mile, but they will not receive cryptos themselves. So Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we can do it here because the lines are short and communication to improve it, to improve the technology, to improve, but, no, because it is possible to bring it there, so why not?
I would maybe add that I think it's also a question about the distribution of knowledge. So how, if we're talking about blockchain-enabled basic income, what is the relationship between a specific community and the developers that can actually change the system? So in your case is impact market, my case is circles, but like how do you create the structure so that there is someone who knows about the system and can access it and change it and debug it, etc., and that it's related to the community somehow. So I think it's more of a question about the distribution of knowledge, because it's definitely possible to do it anywhere. It's just a question about if it breaks, can we fix it? Because if we cannot fix it, then we have a big dependency of power.
Yeah, just a quick addition to that, Martin. I think just because something becomes successful here, I don't think that it's replicable in India or in Kenya because the infrastructure is different, people are different. But what is common is the sense of cooperation and collective action. Those are common. But then how do you bridge the challenges that are posed in India? For example, if you go to a remote state like Nagaland or somewhere, how do you implement, because those challenges are different from the challenges here. The literacy is very different, the infrastructure is different. So I think we need experiments everywhere.
Yes, I'm sort of involved in this as well. But what strikes me when people ask questions is like, it's a fear. What are these people going to do with the money? Why don't we trust them? We don't need to put our perspective on what are they going to do with the money. And I think that is really important. I think that what's been so important with Coviti. Let them do it, and they can organize it. And I think with all the other charities, it also comes from above. But we don't even see ourselves as a charity. We just contribute. What do I mean? We distribute the money to the people that need it more than what we do, and we don't make any judgment. We don't need to question them. No one questioned me. I do my job, I get my pay, that's it. I can do whatever I want. Let them do whatever they want. And they do wonderful things, wonderful things.
Just to echo that, I mean, what's been found is that really people are best placed to actually know what they need. So let's give them the possibility to do so and really achieve what they want. And decide what the impact of, is it a development project or a peace building project? Let them decide what the real impact is. And this way you empower them and you really sort of take a bit of responsibility away from the donor, away from the policymaker, because at the end of the day, it's very difficult for them to understand the ins and outs of the local community. It's kind of an impossible job. You need to live there to really know. So one way to sidestep this shortcoming, which is a natural one, is really just to give them the cash that they need.
To build up on Martin's question of trying here first and elsewhere, it's easy to see a group that is underprivileged and they have low income, and we feel like giving them money is doing something good. But the ethical question is, you give them a taste of something and then you take it away from them. How do you actually solve their position with their chiefs and their mayors? Like, if they are in a position like this and you're not changing the circumstances that led to that type of economy, you giving them funds for a while and then taking it away, they'll go back to the old ways. So question is, what is the purpose of UBI? And we'll probably need to find how it fits in society and the economy here in order to try and apply it there. And I would say the best use of that is if people save it, try and educate their children so that they could get out of that
Poverty trap.
Yeah, poverty. And if I look into a similar situation here, it's probably homeless people. Like this springboard. What will help? Because a homeless person is not necessarily a bad person. They may want to go find a job, but they haven't had a shower in 2 weeks, and when they go and apply for a position, people just tell them to go away. So maybe UBI would be helpful to homeless people who could find shelter, have a shower, buy clothes, and then help them find a job. And once they find a job, they no longer need this income.
Yeah, I mean, it's our expectation that if they are well off, they will take a shower. But why should they take a shower? I mean, so again, we are imposing our expectations or our development outcomes that we are expecting, our notions of the poor. So we are just, so I think that's where the autonomy of the individual is very important. See, at the end of the day, finally, it's the government that has to implement. If we are dreaming of a basic income society, we are expecting that the government gives every single individual a basic amount of money, which is kind of a foundation on which you stand. And then to the extent labor market is available, that itself seems to be a very difficult question, that in future, what kind of jobs will be there? I mean, what kind of gig economy or super gig economy will be there? So to that extent, people should have the freedom to participate or not participate in the labor market. So it's, we expect the state to implement that.
I wonder if I could contribute something from the Namibia pilot project, which hasn't been mentioned here yet today. It was the first major pilot project, was held in Namibia about 10 years ago now. It had some stunning results in terms of additional economic activity amongst the lowest paid and so on, and women's emancipation, additional educational buy-in from parents and schools and children, and better health and nutrition and so on. Very good results. I'll make 2 points about it. When the results were first explained at a meeting at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, by Professor Guy Standing, who had researched the pilot project as it was going on. The people who looked most nervous in the audience were those who were running charities, development charities. And they were actually saying, isn't it better if we provide them with schools and if we provide them with this and that? That is what they wanted to provide. Whereas actually the results had been produced by an experiment that had simply given them the money. And there was a certain feeling of shock around the audience amongst those charity employees, which I found really quite educational. The other thing to say about that particular project is that although it was relatively small amounts of money given to a fairly large single community in Namibia for a period of 2 years, if that had been rolled out nationwide, it would have cost only 3 to 4% of GDP in that particular country. Now, everything is context specific. What that means is it would not be impossible for that government to implement precisely what had been done in that community. That's what we need. We actually need permanent nationwide basic incomes. And it is possible. It's possible in a country like the UK. We've proved through our research that it's possible. Namibia, it's possible. The pilot projects have their use. They show us what the effects can be. And although there are ethical downsides in relation to having to remove the money at the end of the project, we still need more of them to persuade governments that actually this will be good for your populations.
Thank you. I think we've all built up quite the appetite. It's time for lunch. Thank you to our esteemed panel for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.